I want to share with you the story of how my wife and I purchased our home with no money for closing costs and no money for down payment. This is part 3 of that story. At this point in the story, I had lived in the apartment for about 9 years. My wife and I got married in 2015, so we spent 6 years together in the house, and now there was 5 of us total. We're definitely in need of room, only being in a 2-bedroom apartment. We were praying about moving, and so far, the only thing the Lord had given to us was dreams. My wife had a dream about a house with pillars. I had a dream about a house with the kitchen being in the front of the house. And then my wife had another dream where the house was occupied. Somebody was living in the home. And of course, we also had the dream from one of the mothers at the church in which the house was completely furnished. Then one day, driving up Prospect Street, I noticed this house with these pillars. I'm thinking the house is in New Haven. Majority of Prospect Street is part of New Haven. But when I checked the Zillow, I realized that the house was actually in Hamden. When we checked the pictures, we realized that the kitchen was at the front of the house. It's the first thing you see when you came up the staircase. And so we believe we might have found our house. That weekend, we ended up at my mother's house, and I'm sharing the details of the dream as well as the pictures with my sister. At this point, my mother asked, "What are you guys talking about?" I had never told her the dream I had, in which she and I were looking at this house with the kitchen in the front. So we began to go through the details, all the dreams that we had, this picture of the house that we found. And my mother was caught off guard because she said, "I just drove by that house and that house caught my attention. Let's go see it." And of course, my response is, we don't have any money. No money for closing costs, no money for down payment. We're not even approved for a loan. Most real estate agents want you to be pre-approved before they even go look at a house, because people would just window shop and never purchase. But she's like, "We gotta go. Can you call somebody and get us into the house?" So I reached out to a close friend of mine, Torrey Diggs, and he said, "Oh yeah, we can go tomorrow." And so we arranged it, went by, and we got a chance to look at the house. Now, the house had been completely updated. It didn't have as much space as we preferred, and one of the bedrooms was in the basement of the house. But we're trying to follow the dreams that we had. So once we looked at the house, it was a few minutes away from the church, so we did like the location. My mother's telling me we need to put a bid in on the house. So where do we start? Well, several years ago, we had a member of our church that told us that when my wife and I began looking for a home, they had money for closing costs, but I never knew what the amount was. So I mentioned this to my mom, and she says, "Give them a call and see if the money is still available." So I gave them a call. I found out the amount, which was about $10,000, and they told me they can have a check for us by next week. On Monday, we went and picked a check up from them. And on Wednesday, someone else called me and told me they had a check for me. That check was $15,000. On Friday, when I arrived at church, somebody else came and handed me an envelope. In the envelope, it was full of cash. I counted it. It was $5,000. Within 1 week, my wife and I received $30,000. I had only heard of stories like this. I had never experienced something like this ever before. But now we have the money to move forward, but we need to get pre-approved. A friend of the family had recently purchased a house, so they gave us the name of their loan agent. And so we began working on getting approved for a loan. We gave them the amount for the house, and we were approved for $399,000. My credit score had bounced back so well, it was high 700s. Now, my other concern was my name was still on the house from the divorce. So I made them aware up front that I possibly had that house on my credit. Now, what's crazy is when they ran my credit, the house did not show up. So they said to me, "We're going to move forward as if that house doesn't exist." In addition, with me not owning a house in the last 5 years, I qualified to be a first-time home buyer. Things were really falling into place, except someone had put a deposit on the house. And of course, we realized one of the details did not line up. The house was not occupied. So that was one of the dreams that Chaz had, that a family was living in the house when we pulled up to the house. So we began looking at houses within that price range, the 903999, somewhere in that price range. And we located this house out in Hamden. Beautiful house, single family, 4-bedroom. The house did not have a kitchen in the front, but it did have pillars in the front. They were asking $399,000 for the house. We prayed and asked God what we should do, and he said, put an offer in. So that's what we did. But they made us aware that 6 or 7 other people had already put an offer in, and the family would make their decision on Sunday. Sunday came, and they called us to let us know that our offer had been rejected. Now what? We were disappointed. We're looking to the Lord and we're saying, you told us to put an offer in, and now we didn't get the house. But Saturday night, I had a dream. My wife, myself, and my mom were on this airplane. When my mother boarded the plane, she came and sat beside me, and she made the statement that she doesn't like all these new ways of doing things, technology and different things. And I had my phone in my hand, and I was sending out paperwork or signing different documentation. And so as she and I are discussing this, my seat begins to go back, and I find myself reclining until my seat is laying completely flat. I could see outside of the plane, and I realized we weren't flying that high. I could see the water beneath us. I got scared. I remember I was saying to myself, I should have prayed before we got on the plane. But I was like, Lord, I pray that we arrive safely. But I knew the plane did not climb very high at all. So that meant that we weren't traveling a far distance. When I awoke, I had the interpretation to the dream. One was that it was going to be a very easy and smooth transaction, and also it wasn't going to take long. So even though we did not get the house the next day on Sunday, I knew there was a house coming. My wife and I began looking for a second house, and so we located one. We liked the house. We decided to put a bid on it. We looked to the Lord and prayed, what should we do? And the Lord said at this point to make a bid on the house. We got a call a few days later that the house had been sold. Our bid was not accepted. Now we're following God's instructions, but things don't seem to be working out. So we prayed, Lord, what do we do at this point? And God tells my wife, go home and pack. So I knew without a doubt at this point, there's a house coming. So we purchased boxes, cardboard boxes, tape, and we began packing the house up, even though we don't have a house yet. A few weeks go by and we locate another house. This house was only a few minutes from my mother's house. We liked the house, beautiful home. But once again, this house had the same problem as the house on Prospect Street. That 4th bedroom was down in the basement. But there was a bathroom in the basement as well, so we could work with it. We prayed, Lord, what should we do? We realized at this point that we're losing houses because people are overbidding. So our question was, should we put additional money down? He said, yes, do $5,000. So that's what we did. We also wrote a letter explaining that the house was in good proximity to my mother, hoping the letter would have some level of influence. We got a call later that our bid had not been accepted. Once again, things don't seem to be working out. Now, they did inform us, though, that we lost the bid by $30,000. And of course, God only gave us $30,000. So we didn't have an additional 30 to compete with a lot of the offers that were coming in. But I know God, and God knows what he's doing. So I know if we needed more money, he would have gave us more money. Somehow the 30,000 is going to be sufficient. Now, there's another part to this story I got to share. This is the backstory. There's a woman at our church named Deborah Dozier, and she is an architect. And in early 2000, she had bought a piece of land in Hamden and had the land cleared and built the house from the ground up. Not only did she design the house, she was also the house contractor. She hired everyone to come in from every aspect of the house. She found herself fighting with the city of Hamden to have this house built. They called her several times into city planning meetings and different things. And eventually she was able to get the house built. God instructed her to build this house. And she often told the story of how she had no money. She had also lost her job. As soon as she began building this house, she found herself out of work. And yet the money somehow came supernaturally. So she completed the house. I remember coming to see the house soon after it had been completed. It's a beautiful house. Several years after completing the house, she made a statement to me that she always believed that she had built the house for me. She believed that's what God had told her. She believed that there was going to be some minister that was going to live in this house, so she purposely designed the house for a minister. The first time she made that statement to me, I was living in my first house, and I wasn't looking to move anytime soon. Then she made the statement again when she was in the process of selling the house. At this point, I had just moved into the apartment. It was soon after that I married Chaz, so we weren't in a position to purchase a home, especially for the asking price at the time. Now that we were in the process of looking for a home, she made the statement again that she had always felt she had built this house for me. But the house was not on the market. Me and Chaz would talk about it. Chaz had been to the house when Sister Dozier owned the house as well, so she was very familiar with the home. And we talked about how perfect this house would be for our family. But the house was not available. But my prayer was, if you built this house for me and God told you to build it, then we're going to leave this in God's hands. So maybe a week has gone by since our last offer had been rejected. And one morning we get a call from Dozier. She tells us the house is on the market. Me and Chaz are in shock. What's the chances of the house now being available during the time that we're looking for a home? The house had just went up on the market. They had put the sign out that morning. One of the neighbors called Dozier to let her know that her house was now available again. She shot us a phone call, and so me and Chaz called Chazaree and his partner Tony, and we arranged to go over to the house. That morning we came to the house, and it was just as I remember it, even though the family that lived here for about 5 years had made some minor changes to the house. But we did the walkthrough. Now, I was not prepared for what I saw when I entered into the bedroom. The way the bedroom is designed, they have these double doors that leads out to a porch. And as I'm standing in the bedroom, I noticed something on the door. It was a magnet, and written on the magnet, it said Bible Gospel Center, and it said 30th year anniversary, and it said Pastor John Good. Chills like shot through my body. I called Chaz. I was like, you have to see this. So she comes over and she's in shock. It made no sense. This family didn't know my father. They met Dozier after buying her house and developed a relationship with her, but there was no reason why they should have left this magnet on the door. My dad's name was on this house. I said to Chaz, I don't know if this is a sign or not, but this is mind-boggling. So we decided that we're going to put an offer on the house. So we went outside, we're praying, Lord, what should we do? We definitely want to put a bid on the house. We had received a call from Dozier, and she said to us, the Lord said that if you want the house, you have to ask him for it. And so that's what we decided to do in the driveway. We told God, Lord, we want this house, and we want you to give us this particular house. We also prayed, how much should we put down on the home? Once again, Chaz heard $5,000. I knew we had just lost our last bid by more than $30,000. But I was like, this is all we have, so we're going to do what he told us. And so they put the bid in for us, $5,000 above the asking price. Now, we knew other people would probably come see the house. We're in the middle of one of the craziest housing market of all times. It hasn't been this bad since at least 20 years ago. And we had an influx of people coming in from New York that was buying up houses and overbidding. We knew we were the first to come see the house, so the house definitely had potential for a bidding war. But all we could do was leave this in God's hands. Was this his original plan? It seemed like the first two dreams was just to get the ball rolling. But the second dream that Chaz had, this house met that dream. The house was full, people were still living in it. Maybe this was the plan, this was the house all along. My dad's name being on that magnet in the bedroom made me feel like it was. So all we could do is put our bid in and leave the rest in God's hands. I had no idea the next several weeks of our life was about to be the most craziest experience my wife or I have ever had.